how did St James Park come into your life? Did you come as a fan, or how did it all begin? Is it
I'm married into this football club. I mean, that was part of it. There was Paul's father, Arthur, had been coming here for years and years and had brought his boys. And then my son got into it as well. So when he was quite young, I think we started bringing Tom up here when he was about 6. So yeah, I'm married into this club. First time I came to a football match was the 89-90 season. So it was the promotion year, so everything was absolutely fine. So I came straight in on a real high. So that's how it started.
And I suppose going from 89-90, because I first came in 89-90.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a big start. And then you learn about the club that way. And how did that, the dawning realisation of the reality, how did that...
Well, there was, I don't know, I just liked actually being in the crowd. I liked standing on the big bank. I liked sort of the noise and the rest of it. I think that was what I liked. I liked sort of listening to some of the Muppets, and some of the chants that come out are really quite funny, and some of them are like, okay, yes, you lot. But no, I enjoyed that aspect, but wasn't a regular attender. Children came along, so I had to stay at home with young kids rather than that. And it was probably 2003 when I actually got involved in a bigger way.
So we go to 2003, and if we start a little bit earlier, because what we're looking at is sort of the decade between 2000 and 2010.
Right.
Could you give us a bit of context to what led up to your arrival in 2003 and what necessitated that for you and for the club?
Well, as I said, we were coming to football matches anyway, just as a fan, and bringing Thomas as he got a little bit older, and occasionally sort of watching matches. And we came to the Southend game, and I can remember Paul saying we're going to have to leave really, really early because it's going to be very busy and we may not get a ticket and we might not get in. And we did, and we were in the old grandstand, and everybody surrounding us had radios listening to the Swansea match, what was happening, and Kevin Miller saves the penalty, and we're all really excited. And then, of course, at the end of that, no, we weren't. We were out of the league. And I wasn't that... It was like, okay, we'll still be playing football next year. I couldn't really get why everybody else around me was so upset. And then I think the whole Russell and Lewis thing kicked off, and the following week was just bizarre, and the news, and there were, they were locked out, and the police were called, and they were arrested, and it was like some kind of soap opera. Didn't really seem to fit with the football club. So, and it was the time, I think, when the Supporters Trust stepped in to try and see if they could keep things running. And I joined the first work party in May 2003 with others out there weeding and painting, and that's how the summer went.
So that was, you look at the whole history of Exeter City Club, even though it's only recently, this is an absolutely fundamental part of the story. You say you joined the work party. What started to take hold at that point? What was going on at the work parties?
Well, I think everybody at that time, the thought that the football club might disappear. It was one thing to think, oh yes, okay, we've been relegated, we're going to be in the conference, but then suddenly when you haven't got anything and there's a real chance that this club is going to go out of business, the people get more involved. And the fact that there were these, people, the trustees at the time, people like Barry Sansom in particular, who was looking after the stadium and the grounds and trying to keep things up to standard so that we could get a ground safety certificate to start. Because May to July, pre-season, isn't really very long. So you can't sell tickets to anything. You can't sell season tickets, so you're looking for donations. And I think that's when... a lot of fans just said, okay, if I can do something, I'll do something. And I wasn't working at the time. So I had a bit of time on my hands. And I put my hand up and said, is there anything I can do?
fantastic. What was really good about that time? Was it because with hindsight, you look back at that, and what was challenging about it?
It was. I think for those of us that were just volunteering that particular summer, who were just volunteering at a rather low level, it was turn up, pick up a paintbrush, paint something, weed a path, that kind of thing, and we could do that. For those that were at the top, trying to get the money in, the last grandstand appeal, signing up, because we had no bank account, essentially. Nothing could go through, couldn't sell anything from the shop. It was just, and realising the extent of the debt. I think that was pretty scary. I did a stint down in reception, volunteering, and it wasn't unusual for someone to come in and say, "We've come to repossess something. We've come to repossess the generator. We've come to pick up money for an unpaid parking fine." And you had the likes of Terry Pavey, who actually brought his camper van down because he didn't live in the area and was down in what's now Red Square where the camper van was parked, and that's essentially where he lived. I mean, there were people sort of trying to get him money from anywhere. Julian negotiating the players that we had to release, and it must have been, that was particularly a scary time.
How did it all hold together?
Faith, I think, that we could do it. I mean, that was it. There was no harm in trying. If we didn't try, then there would be no Exeter City Football Club. So we were the first. There was nobody else out there that we could ring up and say, "How did you do it?" So we was basically, I think, making it up as we went along. There were more people joined the trust, more money was coming in, businesses were giving stuff and helping out, so paint was donated, all of these kind of things, and we just did it. And I think it was getting to the point where it was Portsmouth was the first. We had the friendly against Portsmouth, and when the team came out, I think that's when everybody thought, "I think we've done this. We're actually there." So yes, that was a moment, but it met so many fantastic people at that time. As I said, these work parties that went on for years, and I made some good friends that way. So that I wouldn't have met otherwise. So it's good.
That's fantastic. And so on to how pivotal was the Manchester United game?
Oh, oh dear. Yes, I was a little bit more involved by that stage. I became a director in August 2004. And obviously we made it through, but it was very, very hairy. I had to take the checkbook home every night to make sure that people didn't write a check, because it was important that we paid the wages. That came first. We never missed a wage bill. Everybody got paid, and that's something we can be really proud of. But it was at the end of every month. It was really, really tight. Whilst we were still managing, it was difficult there were bills and things that were putting out. And I can remember somebody saying to me, "But I've got a budget. I need to buy this." And I had to say, "Well, you might have a budget, but if we haven't got the money in the bank, you can't." So whilst we were there, it was that cup run. It wasn't just the Manchester United game. It was that cup run at that time. So there was a VAT bill due at the end of October, and you're thinking, right, and then we want a match, and you think, right, the prize money's 18 grand, that's the VAT bill. We've got the money to pay the VAT bill. That's the kind of way we were living at that stage. And then the wonder strike from a teenage Dean Moxey that I'll never forget was against Doncaster, wasn't it? I think, yeah. And that was, so we've beaten Grimsby and we've beaten Doncaster, and we're in there we are, and we're actually in the draw. And then that ball came out and you're just looking at the television thinking, has that really happened? And I can remember just sort of like running out until we went out into the lane. We live in a small village, and there's a neighbour sort of down, and he was outside, and everybody sort of jumping up and down as this really happened. And the following day, I mean, you couldn't, the phones just didn't stop. Nobody could get an outside line because everybody was trying to come in. We had all the press. It was just, I mean, and that was the game that gave us the money to come out of the CVA. So it paid off the debts. It gave us that breathing space. It just took all of the pressure away. I'm not saying that without it we wouldn't have managed. I think we probably would, because we had the Red or Dead pledges. That money was there. And I think that that would have grown as we got closer to the end. So we had a substantial amount of money in that anyway. But did it make life easier? And seeing the £1 million coming in when you see the bank statement and there's this bit of money in there, and just looking and Justin, Craig and I just sort of looking at this and laughing, because it just seemed so absurd that we had this sort of, it was the 600,000 that came in from the gate receipt. That sort of that was good times.
When obviously we've got the replay up there, and then Manchester United come back here.
Yeah.
Was that obviously the football side is great, but was it a bit of a celebration in that sense? Because
I mean, I think it was such a magical day up there. They looked after us so well. I have to say that they were the holders of the cup. They brought at the time they opened their trophy cabinet, and Andy came. We were all allowed to touch it and look at it. I mean, they treated us brilliantly. Bobby Charlton was there, and he was absolutely charming. But I'd seen the team sheet, and I could see that all the big names, Alan Smith and whatever, were on the bench. And I just turned around to someone and said, I can see what the tactics are. You could bring it when you're in trouble. You'll bring the big guns on. So there was polite laughing. Got to half time, we're still 0-0. I was like, is this really happening? And said, aren't you doing well? It's like, yes, thank you. Getting closer and closer to full time, and those last 5 minutes, whatever it was, added on, and everybody's screaming, and you're just trying to get this thing, and of course final whistle and go back in, and then there were a few rather black faces around the place, and Bobby Charlton saying, if the game had gone on for another 10 minutes, you'd have lost. Yeah, possibly, but it didn't. It's 90 minutes plus additional time, and I couldn't help myself. I just sort of, when I left, I went over and said, would you be coming to the replay, Sir Bobby? Like, I'm in South Africa. Yes, they weren't very happy with that, because he'd have blown their chances completely. So we had this place down here, and you're thinking, they've got to go into our changing rooms. They won't know what's hit them. And we kept them out deliberately. MUTV wanted to come down and film the ground beforehand, and no. Sorry, you're not going in there. This is going to be a bit of a shock to the system, but it was great. Again, they came down. They were absolutely charming, very happy for us. It was a fantastic night. It was a big occasion. It was just one of those things when you think, this is good fun. This is what it's all about.
That's fantastic, and that takes us up to 2005, and that would be that's ideal for what we're looking to do. So sort of wrap. So how did things develop after that? Was it more relaxed? What was your role?
Was it more relaxed? I mean, we went through V10. I think that would have been in early 2006, which was how are we going to, what's the vision for the future, and where do we want to get to, and that changed the board structure. Up until that time, we'd had almost like they were nearly all trustees. The only two people on the board that weren't actually from the Supporters Trust were Julian and myself. It changed that it needed to be a more business structure. So the idea was there was Denise as chair of the trust, would also chair the club. Julian would take responsibility. We divide the club up into 4 areas, so there'd be football, which included the youth and football in the community, finance, commercial, and operations. So if it had nothing to do with green grass and kicking a ball, it wasn't to do with selling commercial, and it didn't have anything to do with money, then that was me. So and so we had our own little areas. So it was a restructure, and so that helped us, I think, to put certain things on a more business-like footing rather than just having everybody getting involved with everything else. We could look at the staffing structure and other things and try and move the club forward to the next level.
I think that's really important in giving the club stability. I think from the years, it reflects on the pitch as well. In that time, it seems to have that kind of symbiotic relationship. Paul comes in, Tiz comes in.
Yes, I mean that was a kind of testing time, really, because obviously we'd lost the first time when Eamon left and we got Alex in. There was this, how do we go about finding a manager? What do we do? Everybody's looking around the table. How do you find a football manager? But we did, and we got Alex, and he was absolutely the right choice at the right time. And I maintain all of them: Eamon, Alex, and Paul. It was Paul benefited from what had happened before and the progression of the youngsters and other things. So of course, when Alex went off to Tottenham. And it was, we know what we're doing now. We know how we're going to go out and recruit and get a new manager. And we knew what we wanted. And it was definitely somebody who was prepared to invest in our youth, because that is our business model. It has to be. We don't have a wealthy benefactor. We're not going to under this model. So we needed somebody there. So, so we were lucky. We got Paul, and we're hoping first year very nearly out of the conference. That was, going up to Wembley for that Morecambe final and all the expectation, and then suddenly not. That was the first time that I understood what it meant. When people say they were gutted, that's what I felt it all the way. That drive back down to Devon that night. The feeling in my stomach, that was, oh no, we're doing this all over again. But hey, life in the conference wasn't that bad. And then it gets better, and the next year we knew exactly what we were doing, and yes, we're back in the league. And then extra levels of things that you have to do from a health and safety match day, whatever, but we made sure that we operated the grounds all the way through the conference years at the same level to league standard, so it wasn't such a shock to the system with stewards and other things. We had all of that, and then not just one promotion, but hey, get another one as well. Sort of like buses, you wait, and then suddenly there we are, and we're in League One, and that just sort of happened. But that was the general progression of the club. So they were good times. It may not have lasted very long, but, And I think that's one of the things that when we got relegated, so having sort of, held our head above water in League One and then got down, because of the fan, everybody said, nobody was really upset because we're all still really proud that we've got a football club. So there wasn't this devastation about, relegation. It's all right, we're still here and we're still playing. And I think a lot of people, can think back to the early 2000s and what was going on, and Michael Jackson on the pitch in the car, and Uri Geller, and very strange times.
To finish, if I asked you to summarise the decade from 2000 to 2010,
Well, it is going to be one, isn't it, that will stick in history for forever. Because, as I said, you start off with this, the standard ownership, Exeter City, always sort of being there or thereabouts, sort of round about the bottom of the Football League, or mid-table if we're lucky, and then all of that bizarre stuff that surrounded the ownership, and then we end up changing the ownership model, that we show we can do it. As supporters, fans can have a say in how their football club is run. They can be an ownership model, a supporters trust ownership model, and we were the first to do that. So, and success, because under that, we got the as well as holding Manchester United to a draw at Old Trafford in the FA Cup, and then back-to-back promotions. So, yeah, a memorable decade.